Hi. First, I want to voice a little clarity on some of the commentators on YouTube that I respect, but greatly disagree with on a few subjects. Now, fear mongering is what the opposition is doing to us, right? They create this enormous sense of fear, and then use that fear to manipulate policy. And in the same breath, there's some commentators on YouTube. I won't mention their names, but they're using the word socialism. Socialism. The big S word, right? The big S word, and then they point to Venezuela. See, they're eating their pets and they're eating their dogs and their cats because socialism doesn't work. Now, the idea that Venezuela is, because the comparison is always to say that social programs, social policy in the United States will fail, and then they point to Venezuela and the people that eat their dogs, because Venezuela is actually an OPEC nation that depends on their oil. They're not a true democracy, capitalist society like the United States of vast resource and innovation, but they're kind of they're another OPEC nation that got reliant on their own oil. So there is no comparison in terms of socialism in Venezuela and the social policies that people in this country would like to see. And it's ugly and degrading when these commentators come on and make that comparison. Now, are they stupid? Are they ignorant? Or they just don't know economics? But it's a lot of the above. See, in America, we already have socialism for the rich, and we have desperate capitalism for everybody else. The 1%, there is socialism. Government takes care of it, takes care of all their needs, changes the laws to favor their venture capital plans and such. If you don't believe it, I'm going to show you in a second, right? I'll show you how Bill Gates. So Bill Gates, let me finish. Socialism, right? A social project like healthcare for all universal healthcare for all. It's not socialism. It's a social project. It's a social policy, like the police department or the fire department. These are social programs for all people to benefit, a building infrastructure and such. So so stop using the fucking word socialism as a scare tactic. No one's trying to drag the country back into socialism or towards socialism. We already have it at the top. What we're trying to do is get the oligarchy to fuck out so that everybody can prosper. So Bill Gates is making some news. Now, it's not really news. He was at the Massachusetts Medical Society talking again about his influenza scare, right? Now, he keeps saying, he said it, I'm going to show a video, right? In 2014, he did an extensive piece, and he talked about the idea that an influenza or some sort of virus can wipe out 33 million people. Now, in 1918, we had that, the influenza scare of 1980. Not scare, but real. The 33 million people died, and we saw how this, what was called Spanish influenza, spread around the globe and killed 30 million people. So apparently he's saying it again. Bill Gates is calling it the greatest immediate threat to humanity. He's saying that it's worse than the atomic bomb or nuclear threat. Is he right? Yeah, he is right, right? But who's gonna start this influenza? See, there's a profit motive to this particular scare tactic, right? Now, is it a scare tactic or is something that can actually happen? It's both, because the power players that can actually control it are people like Monsanto, the people that can genetically alter virus, alter seed, because that's really what it's about. It's really about, I'm going to play, let's listen to a little bit of Bill Gates, and then I'll come back and I'll commentate.
When I was a kid, the disaster we worried about most was a nuclear war. That's why we had a barrel like this down in our basement, filled with cans of food and water. When the nuclear attack came, we were supposed to go downstairs, hunker down, and eat out of that barrel. Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes. Now, part of the reason for this is that we have invested a huge amount in nuclear deterrence, but we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. We're not ready for the next epidemic. Let's look at Ebola. I'm sure all of you read about it in the newspaper. Lots of tough challenges. I followed it carefully through the case analysis tools we use to track polio eradication. And as you look at what went on, the problem wasn't that there was a system that didn't work well enough. The problem was that we didn't have a system at all. In fact, there are some pretty obvious key missing pieces. We didn't have a group of epidemiologists ready to go who would have gone, seen what the disease was, see how far it had spread. The case reports came in on paper. It was very delayed before they were put online, and they were extremely inaccurate. We didn't have a medical team ready to go. We didn't have a way of preparing people. Now, Médecins Sans Frontières did a great job orchestrating volunteers, but even so, we were far slower than we should have been getting the thousands of workers into these countries. And a large epidemic would require us to have hundreds of thousands of workers. There was no one there to look at treatment approaches, no one to look at the diagnostics, no one to figure out what tools should be used.
So he's really going on and on about this threat of, widespread influenza, and he's so charming, Mr. Gates. Why are we listening to anything that a computer guy says about global health? Because Bill Gates is worth $50 billion. His influence is immense, and his so you can't. I mean, today we got to look at the billionaires. What are the billionaires doing? Right? And why is he doing it? But the key word in his whole pitch so far is investment. Right? See, there's always a profit motive with a guy like Bill Gates. He's not out there trying to save the world or trying to improve health across the globe. They look for investment, right? And how are they going to do that? This is a good one, So because he's saying that you need hundreds of thousands of people to come in, new investment. And who's going to pay for it? You're going to pay for it. I'm going to pay for it. They suck the money out of the U.S. government, and then they don't reciprocate later, right? They don't pay tax, right? They want a global view and a global way to help everyone and profit from it, but they don't give back to the goddamn country that is allowing them to do it. It's always on the back of the American taxpayer. That's the problem. That's socialism for the rich, right? That's what he's implying. Now, yeah, nobody wants to die in an influenza, attack or outbreak or whatever the hell. But look, I'm not a anti-capitalist. I'm not someone who says that these sorts of initiatives to help the world population fight off an influenza attack, because it could be an attack, and it likely will be an attack. Watch what he says later. It's fascinating, right? Right. Is that if you're going to make these initiatives and you're going to have corporations mobilized to do these things and profit from these investments in the global world, and parts of Africa and wherever the hell you're going to go and do this, right? Because you're not going to do it at home first. You're going to do it somewhere else. And he makes that statement. You have to reciprocate the money to the people. You can't steal it. You can't funnel it out the top. You can't reallocate it and keep it offshore in Panama and in Dublin and in wherever, the Cayman Islands, wherever you're hiding your fucking money, right? You have to give it back and reciprocate. So that's the big point I want to make in this. Although, and there's a Monsanto twist, because Bill Gates is intricately involved in intellectual rights, patenting the seeds, right, and the fertilizer through Monsanto, right, and other companies. But they want to get the patent on the seed so that when they go into these places and they, 20 million people die of influenza, right? They want a position. They want position. So it's all about expansionism, this global view of expansionism. And that's fine, but you can't do it without the United States military supporting you. You can't, I'll say that again. You can't do it without the United States military and military might and United States taxpayer money supporting your idea. That is the definition of socialism for the rich, where your ideas are fucking stupid on their own merit. But what you do is you go to Congress and you put four lobbyists around each congressman, and you get them to push this stupid law where Monsanto owns the right to the seed, right, and the vaccine, and everything else around your idea. All right, so that's enough for now. But let's listen to more of what Mr. Gates has to say.
The failure to prepare could allow the next epidemic to be dramatically more devastating than Ebola. Let's look at the progression of Ebola over this year. About 10,000 people died, and nearly all were in the 3 West African countries. There's 3 reasons why it didn't spread more. The first is there was a lot of heroic work by the health workers. They found the people and they prevented more infections. The second is the nature of the virus. Ebola does not spread through the air. And by the time you're contagious, most people are so sick that they're bedridden. Third, it didn't get into many urban areas, and that was just luck. If it had gotten into a lot more urban areas, the case numbers would have been much larger. So next time, we might not be so lucky. You can have a virus where people feel well enough while they're infectious that they get on a plane or they go to a market. The source of the virus could be a natural epidemic like Ebola, or it could be bioterrorism. And so there are things that would literally make things 1,000 times worse. In fact, let's look at a model of a virus spread through the air like the Spanish flu back in 1918. So here's what would happen. It would spread throughout the world very, very quickly. And you can see there's over 30 million people die from that epidemic. So this is a serious problem. We should be concerned. But in fact, we can build a really good response system. We have the benefits of all the science and technology that we talk about here. We've got cell phones to get information from the public and get information out to them. We have satellite maps where we can see where people are and where they're moving. We have advances in biology that should dramatically change the turnaround time to look at a pathogen and be able to make drugs and vaccines that fit for that pathogen. So we can have tools, but those tools need to be put into an overall global health system, and we need preparedness. The best lessons, I think, on how to get prepared are, again, what we do for war. For soldiers, we have full-time waiting to go. We have reserves that can scale us up to large numbers. NATO has a mobile unit that can deploy very rapidly. NATO does a lot of war games to check, are people well-trained? Do they understand about fuel and logistics and the same radio frequencies? So they are absolutely ready to go. So those are the kinds of things we need to deal with an epidemic. What are the key pieces? First is we need strong health systems in poor countries. That's where mothers can give birth safely, kids can get all their vaccines, but also where we'll see the outbreak very early on.
So stop right there. Do you hear what he just said? That the poor countries, that's where we'll see it early on. How do you know? You're making a prediction, or you know for sure? See, that was a real giveaway, right? that last statement that this is where we'll see it first. This is where we'll see the outbreak first. So now that's evidence of maybe he's engineering the idea. Well, he knows, right? That's what that just told me, right? What am I, stupid? I didn't hear what he just said. He just said that that's where it's going to break out first. How do you know? What are you, some kind of biological genius? No, because that's where you'll make it break out first, right? So he threw a lot of other things in there. He used initially he used global failure, and he then said a global host system. He used the word bioterrorism. Right? This is what's going on. These guys are the globalist. See, this is back in 2014. This is not the recent one. Recently, he said, he actually misquoted it. He said in this recent piece of Massachusetts Medical Society, he said that 33 million people could potentially die in 6 months. But that's actually not accurate, because in 1918, 33 million people died from the influenza flu. But that, if you do the population calculation, it would be actually 3 times that number. So you're talking more like 100 or 200 million people that can die from a influenza virus or something along the lines of bioterrorism. But that's the scare. But what they're doing is, he's saying you have to put NATO in place, and you have to get all these investments in place, right? And then what they do, it's like the military-industrial complex. They just wait for a conflict, and then the money pours in, and they're all, that's how it works, right? So if you have all this infrastructure and all this capital investment, and all of these corporations and conglomerates in place waiting for an influenza outbreak, right? And he just told you it's going to happen in Africa. That's where it'll happen first. He just told you. He just said it. That's what they're going to do, right? Am I making it up? Is it? No, it's just the way these guys work. It's business. It's business, right? So here's Bill Gates describing the socialism, the way they're going to use the military, NATO, to get there, because again, without force, right, you're not going to get it done. Now, Monsanto always says, "Oh, we go to Africa and we give them the option to use our seed, right? And if they do use the GMO seed that grows faster and bigger and all this shit, right? Then they're not. Monsanto owns the rights to that plant." They not only they own the rights to the next generation of plant. So if that plant yields seed, that farmer is not allowed to use that seed to grow more crop. That they have to go back to Monsanto, buy new seed, and the justification is, well, the new seed is better, it's more resilient than the old seed, and so on. There's some truth to that, right? But none of this can stay in place, right? There's no way that you can implement intellectual rights like that, because a farmer in Africa is going to tell you, fuck you, Monsanto, I got my seed, I bought my seed, now I'm using the seed from my seed, right? And without military might and without authoritarian regimes here at home that force the military industrial complex to give cover, none of this is possible, right? That's the globalist view. It's not that, it's that, look, it's not a bad, is it bad? Of course it's bad. You see what we're doing all over the world. But only because of socialism for the rich, where these guys control the board, they control the direction of our country, and then they don't reciprocate, that it makes it a bad thing. Because the American people are not profiting from this at all, right? Because the globalists, we're not all globalists, they're the globalists, they're profiting from it. So let's listen to what he says in conclusion, and we'll see what else he says. He says a big one in the end. He says that the military is necessary to make this all happen. I'll stop when he gets to it.
We need a medical reserve corps. Lots of people who've got the training and background who are ready to go with the expertise. And then we need to pair those medical people with the military. taking advantage of the military's ability to move fast, do logistics, and secure areas. We need to do simulations, germ games, not war games, so that we see where the holes are. The last time a germ game was done in the United States was back in 2001, and it didn't go so well. So far, the score is germs 1, people 0. Finally, we need lots of advanced R&D in areas of vaccines and diagnostics. There are some big breakthroughs, like adeno-associated virus, that could work very, very quickly. Now, I don't have an exact budget for what this would cost, but I'm quite sure it's very modest.
So now we're talking about numbers. He's talking about the budget. It's very modest, right? Comparable to other things, right? Here's the intellectual. How much is it going to cost? How much investment is the United States government going to have to make in this project that all the subcontractors line up and make millions and millions of dollars? How much are we going to have to spend because we're going to fix the epidemic and these guys are going to make all the money, right? That's what he's saying, right? So let's listen to how much it's going to cost and how they're going to secure that effort. Socialism for the rich. Let's hear it.
Compared to the potential harm. The World Bank estimates that if we have a worldwide flu epidemic, global wealth will go down by over $3 trillion, and we'd have millions and millions of deaths. These investments offer significant benefits beyond just being ready for the epidemic. The primary health care, the R&D, those things would reduce global health equity and make the world more just as well as more safe. So I think this should absolutely be a priority. There's no need to panic. We don't have to hoard cans of spaghetti or go down into the basement. But we need to get going because time is not on our side. In fact, if there's one positive thing that can come out of the Ebola epidemic, it's that it can serve as an early warning, a wake-up call to get ready. If we start now, we can be ready for the next epidemic. Thank you.
No, thank you, Bill, for telling us about the globalist view of the world, where we pay the bill and you make all the profit. That's what's really going on here. Now, again, the threat is 30 million people are going to die. You better get involved. Or you don't want 30 million people to die, right? When 30 million people die, see, we told you so. We told you so, right? Meanwhile, they got the finger on the button to kill 30 million people. Now, here's the bait and switch, right? It's a big bait and switch, right? Because once you're in these places doing all this health research and all this bullshit, right? You're already in place. You have military backing, NATO, because you're on some kind of, you've sold the country on some kind of humanitarian effort. But really, it's about intellectual rights and selling certain seeds or certain crops and fertilizers in these third world nations, right? And here at home too. But again, if we don't profit, if we as people in our great nation don't profit from these moves, then we have no interest in pursuing it, right? So do we want to regulate what Bill Gates, his regulation, do we want to really regulate what Bill Gates and his brilliant, mind points at and says, look, we can make money here or we can help somebody there? No, we want to stay out of Bill Gates's pocket, his pants, right? We want to stay away from his vision, right? But when he does execute it, you must pay us. You are in debt to the United States of America. You are an American citizen. Your whole organization, your whole profit structure comes from us. We give you the backing. United States military, boots on the ground. We help you to achieve these goals, and we get nothing out of it. Right? We get nothing out of it. We get some pompous vision of saving 30 million people, and you get another billion, $2 billion, $5 billion. We pay for it out of taxpayer money, and you make the profit. See, that's the fucked up thing about this economy, right? See, when you see things like this, when you pierce through it, and again, my jerk-off friends will say, the commentators say, "Oh, socialism. Conte's a socialist because he likes Bernie Sanders and socialism." No, it's social. This is the. It's not socialism. It's not democratic socialism. It's not Republican socialism. It's not capitalism, and this is oligarchy. This is monopoly, right? This is a big boys game of monopoly, billionaire monopoly. That's what this is, right? And you have to stop it so that the money actually hits our real economy, and people, 60% of the country are not living on food stamps, right? Right? 60% of the country doesn't have $400 to their name. People are living in abject poverty. Policy that affects real people. That's what I'm talking about. This bullshit that Mr. Gates is talking about is nice, but it doesn't help us. It's a globalist pipe dream for billionaires, right? To expand into new markets and sell their fucking seed. My name is Marcus Conte. I'm an investigative journalist, a commentator here on YouTube, also a candidate for the United States Senate here in New York. Peace out.